Xolo Sawubona, hoe gaan it? This week we're happy to report that the lead on News 24 is broadcasting from both Johannesburg and Pretoria. Up next, our investigative journalist Kyle Cowan continues his unravelling of the complex multi-million-rand cryptocurrency scheme that well-known insolvency attorney Bouwer van Niekerk was embroiled in at the time of his murder. Still, his assassins remain at large.
At this point, there were initially stories about 1.8 billion rand, then it was 3.6. Now it's 10.7 according to Latopa and one affidavit. And I spoke to one creditor this morning who told me, no. It was 36 billion. Now it's 72. So the approximately 2,000 creditors are of a genuine belief that there is, a massive pot of money sitting around somewhere. And by logic, by the deduction, 50% of that now belongs to Thabo Latopa and NTC. That is according to the agreement that he had with his investors. And the investors all believe that they are now entitled profit share based on that money. Now you can understand why tempers are flaring.
Later in the show, the asset management industry raises eyebrows at the latest Public Investment Corporation board appointments. And finally, we end off with On This Day in South African History.
New episodes of The Lead air Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m.
How's that? The Lead's been listened to around 600,000 times now. You can rate us 5 stars, hit like, follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify and YouTube. That's to stay notified of our next edition. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is the South African story. Moving to our top story in The Lead today, 4 people continue to elude the Gauteng police's grasp for the brazen murder of top Johannesburg insolvency attorney Bouwer van Niekerk. He was shot and killed in his law firm offices early in September. Now, since then, the questionable multi-million-rand NTC Global Trade Fund that van Niekerk helped place in business rescue has since been provisionally liquidated. The fund's partners are now, according to them, living in fear as well, as investors are now pushing the court to get their millions back. Our News 24 investigative journalist Kyle Cowan joins live in our Johannesburg studios now and not via Cape Town. How's it, Kyle? So lucky to be with you at the News 24 offices here in Randburg.
Thank you, Graeme. Welcome to Johannesburg. It's nice to see you here.
It's lucky to be back. Really enjoying the city. Where do we stand today with the investigation? Still no arrests, right?
No arrests have been made as yet. We understand that the investigation team is quite hard at work behind the scenes, collecting CCTV footage, doing all sorts of other things that we cannot really talk about yet. But this is going to be difficult, despite the fact that there are so many CCTV cameras around and there's footage of these people doing this. We must understand that this is going to be a difficult investigation. It's not going to be as easy as 1, 2, 3, find the guy, arrest him, and we're off to court. It's going to take time. This is what I've tried to explain to people who may have an interest in the investigation from the Van Niekerk family side. Is just it's going to take time. There needs to be a little bit of patience, and especially there needs to be a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing room for the cops to just do what they need to do without pressure from the outside.
Especially if they want to get a successful conviction at the end of the day, right? Speaking of the family, you were at the Woodmead Country Club in Johannesburg over the weekend for much of Saturday for the memorial for Bouwer. You spoke to his brother there. Just take us to the scene. Obviously heartfelt. Friends and family still in mourning, right?
Yeah, so about 250 to 300, friends, family and colleagues of Bouwer's arrived at the country club. There was quite a nice venue set up there. And then, we heard from his father, Professor Anton van Niekerk, who gave quite a moving speech, I think, and obviously, lamenting the fact that one of his 3 sons is now gone. And we heard from his ex-wife, Nicola van Niekerk, as well, who spoke, to me quite strongly about the Bouwer's devotion that he had to his young son and how his entire world literally revolved around his son. And the thing that really stuck with me, is his brother Albert, who stood up and spoke about the fury that he had, the anger. And I think that this is completely understandable for anyone who's lost a family member, even in a car accident or anything, but to have your family member murdered, to have your brother murdered, and this family was very close, mind you. The brothers were extremely close with one another.
You got that in the sense of many of the interviews already. They're very, very close.
Very close-knit family. They talked on the phone often. They were always, visiting each other. And he spoke of this fury, and it's so understandable, this anger that he has, that sometimes that anger even overwhelms, that terrible heartache that you have of your brother that has just been killed. And it was quite a touching ceremony. There were quite a lot of laughter. As my understanding is Bouwer, if you spent any time with Bouwer, then there would normally be quite a bit of laughter involved in that process. So, it was quite touching to see, and obviously it's also quite important in terms of trying to understand who he was as a person. As a journalist, we interact with people sometimes on a professional level, and it's just about this particular case or that particular case. You don't really get to know the person as a human being. And now, having attended the memorial, it's quite. I can understand a bit more about who Bouwer was. Just a little bit, just to try and get inside his mind a little bit.
And the brother was also stating to you that there's this obvious deep anger sort of welling within inside of him, right?
Yeah. So this was actually during his speech, and he said this to the packed room, and he spoke about this fury that just felt like fire going through his veins sometimes, and it's such an understandable human reaction to some, just like a terrible violent crime like this. Your brother is there one minute and the next is gone, and it's not because of an accident or a mistake that he made. It is because people arrived at his office with the express intent of murdering him and followed through on that. It's it's a very harsh reality to deal with.
And Bouwer leaves behind his son, right?
Yeah, his young son. We've chosen obviously not to name him because he is a minor, and I saw him very briefly at the memorial, and he was obviously very emotional, very distraught. I think it's an extremely difficult time for the family and also for Bouwer's son. It's something that I genuinely, you think that you sometimes can imagine what these families must be going through, and you genuinely can't until you see that raw emotion. And that's why it's important for us. Sometimes people don't understand why journalists are there. They sometimes see us as vultures just trying to pick the bones off their tragedy or whatever. But it really does place us in a stronger position to be able to tell the story by bearing witness to these kind of things. And that's why we were there. Our colleagues from Netwerk 24 were also there. And it's one of those things that I will carry with me for a very long time. Similarly, there were moments at the funeral for Klute and Thomas Murray in Pretoria 2.5 years ago, and there was particularly one when the bagpipes were playing an ode to the father and son who'd been murdered. It's one of those moments that stick with you, and often I'll find myself thinking about that and just thinking about the words that were spoken there that day.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like an emotional vignette, right, that will stick in your mind's eye for such a long time. While the family continues to grieve, no real sort of movement in the investigation. As you say, a lot of it is sensitive. We have to give it space and time. Let's go to the heart of what Bouwer was embroiled with at the time. Here's this NTC trading fund. In our previous edition, we were talking about how it's involved in multi-millions of investors' money to essentially be part of this cryptocurrency scheme that promised obviously greater return on investment. We're starting to get a little bit more detail about what that return on investment exactly was. And I was quite sort of intrigued to see that Marius Venter, the marketing head, and Thabo Latopa, the main sort of CEO, if you will, running this, they have an automated bot that they think is the ultimate winning scheme here that automatically finds those quick return on investments. Help us understand this business that Bouwer was involved with in a business rescue sort of position.
Yeah, so NTC Global Trade Fund is a small ecosystem of 3 companies. It's NTC, Arbitra Wallet, and a company called Voxy Trade registered in the US. Now, everything I'm about to say is how this company would have been marketed to potential investors. So I'm not saying this is how it actually happened. This is how it was supposed to happen. So you download the Arbitra Wallet app off Play Store or I don't know what the App Store is for Apple users. You download that app, you create an account, and then when it comes time for you to actually pay money over, you would go to your bank and transfer EFT money from your bank account to the F&B bank account of NTC Global Trade Fund. Now, ostensibly...
Nifty, hey? That's nifty. That's direct.
It's you don't actually do it on the app itself, which to me would have been a big red flag. You make withdrawals on the app and then the money is paid into your bank account.
Thanks for clarifying.
From NTC, but you don't ever really, your financial information never actually really passes through the app, which to me would have been a big red flag from day one in any event.
Fair enough.
NTC Global Trade Fund then told investors, we have something called Pionex Bot. We have this automated bot/computer program that will scan dozens of different cryptocurrency exchange platforms, and it'll look for profits in trading. So let's use, for example, Bitcoin being the most well-known. Let's say, for example, and these prices are obviously fictitious and made up, if one Bitcoin is 15,000 Rand on this particular cryptocurrency exchange, the bot will see that actually on this other exchange it's selling for 15,000 Rand and 1 cent, and it will quickly do the transactions to make that 1 cent of profit in large volume. That's where you make your profits on these trades.
And all those 1 cents add up, right, Kyle?
It all adds up. It all adds up. And they sold this company, NTC Global Trade Fund, they sold this Arbitra wallet idea as you will make between 0.32 and 4% profit per day. Now, for NTC's trouble, it keeps 50% of that profit. You get paid out the other 50% as a profit into your wallet. And if you leave your investment for 12 months, you'll earn a 1% interest on your total investment. Now, this sounds strange. It is the method in which they were raising money was to issue, irredeemable debentures to people who were paying money into the NTC bank account. There is a lot of question around the legality of that, whether that is technically a financial service, whether NTC was supposed to register as a financial services provider. At the end of the day, debentures are a way of loaning money for a private company to loan money from investors, and then that money has to be paid back. I don't know of anyone who will loan money to anyone for zero interest unless it's a family member or someone is in need. So this whole thing needs to be unpacked in quite a lot of detail. At the end of the day, what it boils down to is you put money in. On a daily basis, this wallet that we have created for you will show you that it's generating profit. And you can withdraw that money at any time. That is what really sold people on this, because then the word of mouth started to spread because people were able to put in 10, 20,000. Within a couple of days, they were withdrawing 25 or maybe 30,000 if the trades had gone that well. And they were then able to tell their family members, well, chaps, if we all pool our money together and put a lot of money in, we can make a lot of money very quickly. And that's really how this thing spread so quickly.
And it sounds so lacquer within the context of South Africa, where jobs are difficult to come by these days. The GDP might be extending itself a little bit as we speak, but people just don't have that income like they used to. So we're all looking for quick ways to make an extra buck. Everyone's got a side hustle, hey?
I'm sure. The one thing that really strikes me about this is that I'm quite sure that there are a lot of investors who have lost money that they didn't really have to lose, but many of the investors that I've seen, or the names that I've seen and been able to check them out a little bit, these are people who have quite a bit of disposable income already. And I just have to remind you, Graeme, what we're talking about here is it's a period of 6 to 7 months where 476 million Rand was paid into NTC's bank account. This is explosive growth. It goes from having 3,000 Rand in the bank account 1 month to 1.9 million, and all of a sudden we're talking about 40, 50, 1 month 133 million into that bank account. It's just, the explosion in it is just crazy.
And then the NPA goes, something's not like here. We need some sort of investigation here. We believe it's a Ponzi scheme, according to the prosecutors. They don't manage to succeed in that initial case. Bouwer enter Bouwer. He sort of helps, enter the company into business rescue in an attempt to unfreeze many of the millions that the NPA had frozen, because it wanted to obviously withhold that and try and shield the creditors here in this particular case. And then just remind us from there, Bouwer's colleague that helped with the business rescue then also had received death threats. Bouwer unfortunately loses his life. And then we saw a headline just this Friday that now provisionally liquidated. That's the case that's been brought by how many of the creditors now?
Group of 26 creditors, and we haven't named them for a very good reason. We're concerned at this point around the safety of individuals. So what we've done is we've just referred to as a group of creditors have now obtained this. All the other creditors, of course, know who these people are, but we are being cautious at this point because obviously tempers are flaring, and one murder has already been committed. We don't need to place any further people in danger. This provisional liquidation order is important. What happened with this case is it was filed in 2024. There was a lot of discussion between the legal parties and the parties who brought this. There was intervening applications to keep the company in business rescue and not make it a liquidation. It's all very complicated. At the end of the day, they decided, we're going to postpone this indefinitely, this case, to seek the liquidation. It can be revived at any point, and obviously these creditors, having seen the events around Bouwer van Niekerk's murder, and then very importantly, the resignation of Mr. Kirknoop as the business rescue practitioner, it sort of leaves the company in limbo. And they've stepped in, they've obtained that provisional liquidation order. Now we'll have a process whereby liquidators are appointed through nomination. I know that there is quite a lot of action amongst the creditors to file their nomination forms to ensure that their chosen liquidator or liquidator who they believe is trustworthy has claims in the file for when it is, decided on by the Master's Office. And at that point, on the 6th of November, the Master will make provisional appointments before that, but on the 6th of November, we go back to court, and then parties who don't want this company to be liquidated finally must bring legal argument to and show cause why not.
You're listening to the latest edition of The Lead on News 24 with Graeme Raubenheimer. If you've got an opinion on what you've heard so far, drop us a short voice note on our WhatsApp hotline. That's 072 562 3179.
You're listening to The Lead, broadcasting out of the heart of Gauteng. That's right. I'm in Johannesburg and Pretoria this week. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer. I'm in conversation with our investigative journalist Kyle Cowan about the latest regarding Bouwer van Niekerk's murder and the NTC Global Trade Fund, a multi-million-rand cryptocurrency trading scheme that the insolvency attorney was involved with at the time. Kyle continues to unravel this intricate deal. What really went on here? What was the motive for Bouwer's murder? A lot of unanswered questions as the saga drags on. Let's continue the conversation here. To add a little bit of spice to the mix, of course, Kyle went out and one of his latest pieces is seminal reading in this entire saga thus far. 2,000% investment growth inside the 484 million rand NTC deals linked to Bouwer van Niekerk murder that was filed just yesterday. Now explain this to us. You've essentially found a bit of a smoking gun, if you will, which the NPA... Did they also find the smoking gun?
I don't think so. If they did, they didn't really set it out in their court documents very well. And the whole reason, so if you talk to anyone involved in NTC, particularly on Thabo Letopa's side, who's still not talking to us, unfortunately.
Very unfortunate.
If you look at his argument, he'll say to you, but the NPA said there's no Ponzi scheme here. The court found that the NPA was accusing us of a Ponzi scheme. The court found no Ponzi scheme here because of one simple thing. The NPA could not show that money from new investors was being used to pay old investors. But it's a very technical thing.
But that makes sense. That makes sense to me.
It does make sense because that apparently is the hallmark or the definitive proof of a Ponzi scheme. You're paying old debts with new money coming in from
You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's the old adage. And what we've looked at here, and maybe it's necessary to take just one step back. Yes.
If you look at all the litigation that has happened around this time. So throughout this entire process, despite the preservation order freezing the physical cash in the bank accounts, Letopa and Mr. Venter and other agents acting on behalf of these companies, and the reason why I say this is because we're not sure who actually authored some of these letters and press releases, they've been telling investors, don't worry. Yes, the physical, liquid cash is preserved in these bank accounts, but you can log on to a Bitra wallet and you can see that your wallet value is still increasing. And that is because the money that has already been pulled out of the NTC bank account to trade with on this trading platform, on Pi and Xbot, has been trading the whole time. It's been generating money.
So it's regurgitating.
Time. It's been using the pot of money available to it, and it's just been buying and selling cryptocurrency to nobody's end. At this point, there were initially stories about 1.8 billion rand. Then it was 3.6. Now it's 10.7 according to Letopa and one affidavit. And I spoke to one creditor this morning who told me, no. It was 36 billion. Now it's 72. So the approximately 2,000 creditors are of a genuine belief that there is, a massive pot of money sitting around somewhere. And by logic, by the deduction, 50% of that now belongs to Thabo Lethopa and NTC. That is according to the agreement that he had with his investors. And the investors all believe that they are now entitled profit share based on that money. Now you can understand why tempers are flaring.
Yes, because all of these little monies, this little percentiles are all going to this other place that we don't know about.
So we approached our latest story from a very simple premise.
This is super interesting, yeah.
We said, okay, if we completely ignore the rainbows and unicorns, the fairy tales, because we don't know if that trading platform actually exists. We don't have sight of it. We have no documents saying this is the value of it. So let's ignore that completely and let's look at one simple fact. Thabo Lethopa, in his latest affidavit filed on the 10th or the 11th of September, he says 478 million rand was invested in a period of, the last 2.5 years, etc. Since, including the preservation order, it's grown to 10.7 billion rand. That's a 2,138% increase. I think that it may be one of the biggest sort of increases in investment money if it is real. I don't believe it is real, and this is why. If you look back at the bank account of NTC, Thabo Lethopa never had 478 million rand in his possession at one time to invest. He also does not have 478 million over time to pay over to that trading platform.
To justify a big overall figure that would potentially be lying in a bank account that we're unaware of.
In previous affidavits, contradicting himself, he said about $104 million was sitting in the trading account, which is a lot less. That's about 1.8 billion rand. He based that on screenshots of his own wallet balance. But if you go back and look over time, the very simple fact is 476 million rand was paid in by investors. 213 million was paid out to investors, which means investors are still owed their original capital investment of about 262 million rand.
Right.
That's the money we're looking for.
Yeah, that's the court case now with the liquidation, etc. That the creditors are hoping to now get that.
So
money
that
back.
group of 26 creditors are not even, they've liquidated the entire company in the hope that they get back their own investments, which collectively amounts, I believe, to about 14 million spread across the 26 people. That is a significant amount of money for them, obviously. But if you go back and trace that and you try and say, okay, if this business is rescuable, if it is viable, the entire premise of the business rescue was it can be rescued because there are these billions sitting in cryptocurrency. And all we need to do is find a way to bring this back into a place where it can be accessed by creditors. And there was an agreement struck as part of the myriad litigations between Lethopa, Knoop, and Van Niekerk on the one side, and other attorneys including for some of the individuals who've brought the liquidation application. And they've said, here's the agreement. Mr. Lethopa agrees to do X, Y, and Z. NTC and Kurt Knoop on the other side agree to do A, B, and C. One step follows the other. The most important step is Mr. Lethopa will open an account at Luno, which is a very well-known South African cryptocurrency company, transfer out of the billions sitting in this wallet overseas somewhere in Pioneer spot, 300 million rand. That 300 million will cover the 262 for the creditors and leave a bit of margin of error there for whatever incidental costs may arise, in relation to these creditors and what money they owed.
To do good by the people who invested in the first place.
That makes the entire problem disappear. If Lethopa had done that, if he had followed that court order and said, okay, I'll create this account, transfer the 300 million rand, all of this goes away. The business rescue would have been dissolved, Kurt Knoop would have gone away, Bouwer van Niekerk would have gone away. He refuses to do that. Instead, on number 99, Mr. Lethopa fires his attorneys and says in court papers that I was badly advised. I do not want to give Mr. Knoop 300 million rand. Of course, what he's ignoring is that he's not giving it to Mr. Knoop. It would have sat at Luno in an account that Knoop had control of and that he had sight of. And this leads to the inevitable conclusion that there's something fishy with Pioneer Spot. And if you then go and look at it closely, there is one of the largest cryptocurrency trading platforms in the world that does this sort of thing, is Pionex. It's registered in the US. It's a well-known company. Influencers talk about it. It's got a great website. All the information you need is all there. PionexBot.com, which is Thabo Lethopa's entity, if you go onto Pionex's, the legitimate website, there's a verification feature. if you put that URL in there, it says to you, doesn't exist. It's not affiliated.
Sure. Okay.
So it's something that's been designed to look like a legitimate cryptocurrency trading platform. Then the big question that people then ask me is, okay, but why do our wallet balances keep increasing? Thabo is telling us, Mr. Letopa is telling us that this is legitimate trading activity that's going on. That's why we're hearing stories about billions, because it's been building up and building up and building up. I think in all likelihood, and I may be wrong about this, but in all likelihood, I think the Arbitra wallet system is just a very semi-sophisticated but also quite simple computer program that just you put in a value and it will update everyone's value.
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
And it's all just on a computer.
Yeah,
there's no actual trading happening.
Yeah, it's got its formula and it's going to accrue a value.
And that's probably controllable by the user.
Yes.
Because there are two big... The main clue to this, if you look at NTC's bank statements, and now we have statements for the last period that the bank account was active before it was frozen. It's October to November 2023. No money actually leaves that bank account to go into any trading platform. So if you're saying to investors, I'm going to use your money to invest on this trading platform, no money physically leaves the bank account. That's where the rub is. If the money was going out of the bank account in lump sum, so what you would expect to see, you would expect to see deposits by investors, and maybe at the end of every day or at the end of every second or third day, a big lump sum would be transferred to a singular account.
Right.
And it would be the same account at the same time. And then big lump sums would be coming back in before there's disbursements to the investors as they're withdrawing their money. Instead, what we're seeing is money comes into the NTC bank account, it's paid out of the NTC bank account. Where that 213 million that was paid out, we are told that this was to investors, to debenture holders who had withdrawn their money on the app. We have not verified that. We have not gone to check and make 100% sure that, user 001 put in 10,000 and got out 10,500, being his 10,000 plus a little bit of profit. That's a process that's going to take quite a long time. That we're talking about more than 2,000 people. We are trying to do that in a way that makes sense for our readers in terms of journalism, but we also know that there are accountants, liquidators, etc., attorneys who have done that exercise and who have identified people who they have some questions for about money that was received but not necessarily paid in.
Just indulge me for 1 second. Let's just push our heads back a little bit, and then somebody will ask, yeah, but then why did Bouwer van Niekerk have to lose his life, right? And of course, the outright motive cannot be confirmed at this stage.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult to speculate about motive. But let me postulate a position. Let me speculate a little bit with
a learned position, knowing that you've done all the hard yards here, Kyle.
On the 31st of August, Bouwer van Niekerk receives a phone call, and it says to him, resign from NTC, or you won't see the end of the week. He does not see the end of the week. That is the most critical piece of evidence that police will now have to work with. What makes the police's job difficult is that in June of 2025, now remember this entire argument between Mr. Letopa and Mr. van Niekerk on the one side and Mr. Knoop, it's been becoming very acrimonious. There's lots of money at stake here. There are potentially jail terms at stake here. If we go back to June, Letopa put out a communication to these 2,000 odd creditors who are owed collectively 262 million rand in real money. They believe potentially that they are owed hundreds of millions each because of what this app has told them, because of what Letopa keeps telling them, that there are billions available for distribution. For individuals who put in R1 million, that could mean 150, 200 million rand payday. And he tells these creditors that Bouwer van Niekerk and Kurt Knoop are standing between you and your money. That, to my mind, immediately placed a massive target on Bouwer and Kurt.
Especially for creditors or investors that we don't have knowledge of. They're not public-facing in terms of...
Correct.
That hasn't been revealed yet, right?
Correct. And what the net effect of that is, it means that while we cannot... speculate in terms of the identity of the people behind this.
Sure.
What we can say is that the police will now have to go through 2,000 creditors, 2,000 people potentially who've lost money in this scheme to try and find out who did this. Because you already have the threat, you have the idea created in the minds of creditors, and only once they've established that can they then try and establish who was actually responsible. Did that letter of 11 June really cause people, creditors, to become so fed up and angry that they decided to take drastic, fatal action? Or is this just a confluence of events? Is this something else in Bouwer's life that he was working on? Is this one of the other cases?
Good point.
I don't believe it is, because we have the evidence of the threat on the 31st of July.
Yes.
But this is what the police are going to have to struggle with.
A big question, and because it's Matlanga Inquiry Week, in a quick nutshell, because we've got to start wrapping up. Do you have any confidence that the police have the ability to genuinely investigate something, as you say, finding the identities of some 2,000 creditors, unraveling a very ingewikkeld cryptocurrency multi-million-rand network that even has potentially global links?
I have confidence in the police to ensure that 1 + 1 = 2. So in a complicated investigation like this, how I would approach it is start from known facts and work your way backwards. Right. So don't try to investigate 2,000 people. Try and investigate one person and move from there. That will lead you to the one out of the 2,000.
Yes.
I understand that there have been concerns about the police's competency, particularly in complex investigations like this. From what I understand, and we discussed this previously, the team who's on this case are quite competent, are experienced. So I hesitate to say it, but 75%.
Okay, but that's a pretty good shot from Kyle.
Should be 100, but...
But yeah, this is why we have a commission of inquiry happening this week, right? It's going to eventually raise all these questions, and hopefully it will create some sort of solutions. I am very naive when it comes to the silver linings, but let's see. Anything we've missed here for now, Kyle?
No, I think at this point we understand, I think, how the NTC business worked, how the business model worked. We understand a lot about the money flows. I have lots of questions about some money that was paid out to Mr. Latopa and to his own other companies, about 80 million rand, probably more. Those sort of things will have to be interrogated and answered. But at this point, we unfortunately don't have anything more to say about the murder investigation, which I hope will change in the course of the next few days.
And that's Kyle Cowan, our senior investigative journalist here at News 24, finally having a face-to-face meeting formally in the physical flesh on this very podcast. It's lekker to have you here.
Thank you, Graeme.
Trending topic.
A quick look at our trending topic now, and it's said to be the largest asset manager on the continent. That's around 3 trillion rand in investments, and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange's biggest player by a landmile. But the Public Investment Corporation's latest board appointments have raised some genuine concerns. Only one of its 10 directors have a background in actual asset management. Also, as News 24's Carol Payton reports, 3 of the 4 new non-stakeholder directors have a history with former CEO Dan Machila, whose tenure had its fair share of some serious corruption allegations. Industry is now generally concerned about the new leadership shakeups, with Mpumelelo Maseko the only investment pro who's been appointed. For more, read Payton's Trillions at Stake. PIC board appointments raise concern, which is still trending on the front page of News 24.
This is Bruce Whitfield's Business Week. It's powered by Capitec, the business bank for everyone. It's business without the boring bits. Each week we share with you just what you need to know to help you understand and better navigate a deeply complex, a really confusing and uncertain world. A weekly wrap with the most important stories from the world of business, money and finance on News 24.
Ending off today with On This Day in History, the 15th of September 1910. Well, on this day, General Louis Botha and Hertzog's South African Party had won the majority number of seats in the House Assembly, forming the very first government of the Union of South Africa. The Union was formed in 1910 after the South Africa Act was passed in Britain, granting dominion to the white minority over native African, Asiatic, mostly Indian, and coloured and other mixed races at the time. This act brought the colonies and republics, Cape Colony, Natal, now KwaZulu-Natal, of course, the Transvaal, of course, now Gauteng, and Orange Free State, now the Free State, together as the Union of South Africa. On this day, South Africa had held its very first election after the formation of the Union, and General Louis Botha, the leader of the South African Party, had won 67 out of the 130 seats in Parliament, making it the majority. The Unionist Party, led by Leander Jameson, had won only 37 seats. Crowds of party supporters had gathered at Market Square in Johannesburg to hear the outcome. Parliament was constituted on 4th of November 1910, and Botha became the very first Prime Minister of the Union, holding office from 1910 to 1919. Botha appointed Jan Smuts as his Minister of Defence. It was under Botha's government that the Immigrants Regulation Act was passed on the 14th of June 1913. That act put an end to Indian immigration and restricted their movement within the country. After a protracted period of passive resistance led by Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian Relief Act was then passed in June 1914. That's courtesy of the South African History Online database on this day in history, the 15th of September 1910. On to some housekeeping matters here at The Lead, and we must say we apologize unreservedly for a factual error in episode 100 of The Lead, entitled "Who is Andre Pienaar, the low-level spook bad-mouthing South Africa in DC?", in which specialist journalist Carol Payton made reference to Pienaar meeting trade union solidarity in Washington, DC. This was inaccurate and was brought to The Lead's attention by Payton herself. We wholly regret this error, as News 24 commits itself to trusted news first, always. As you know, we'll be bringing The Lead live from the Madlanga inquiry in Pretoria this week. That'll be from Wednesday to Friday. Who knows how long KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi will be on the stand. We believe that it could be several days, and we'll bring you that rolling coverage as and when it happens. To be reminded of future episodes, of course, you can hit the follow and subscribe buttons on our Spotify, Apple, and YouTube podcast channels. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, and so long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have The Lead.